Arrow here. Welcome back to the Truth Behind the Scales podcast, where we find ourselves in a space for truth, shadow, and possibility. No filters, no scripts, just a real conversation. Let's begin. And today I bring you the concept of inspire. Now, the way that I'm looking to approach this is based off of past experiences that have led me to learn and grow in ways that have led me to develop a sense of wisdom that I am now sharing with you. So, to start off, my journey has been quite the journey, I might say. And in all of this, I have gotten used to working with the discomfort of my past thoughts and emotions that have stemmed from past traumas, disappointments, and things that usually take up space and tend to linger long enough to hold us back. Now, it's hard to identify what is holding us back because we are in the constant state of survival. There's always some type of responsibility that we have toward ourselves, toward others, that keep us from allowing ourselves to tap into what needs a lot of processing, reflection, and addressing. So we find ourselves a lot of the time just saying things like, well, I don't have time to feel that. I don't have time to sit down. There's no moment in my life where I can have a breather and sit down with what needs addressing because I have to do my job. I have to do whatever I need to do for my family, or I just feel like it's easier to just go and distract myself with whatever it is that I find enjoyment in. But in reality, this is just us subconsciously refusing to acknowledge what lives in our minds, our body, and soul. And a lot of the things that live there need addressing, as the worst thing that we can do is not allow ourselves to meet with ourselves. We should frequent with ourselves enough to a point where we can allow ourselves to be seen. We like to be seen by others, but sometimes when we look to be seen by others, we are subconsciously mirroring what we want for ourselves. We should look to aim to address what is causing us the discomfort that lives within our minds, bodies, and souls, so that way we can uncover the hidden parts of ourselves that, again, want to be seen. Now, you may ask, well, Arrow, how can I do that? How can I find these parts that need to be seen? Well, here's the answer: shadow work. Now, for those of us who do not know what shadow work is the type of work in which you look to uncover the parts of you that you repress, hide, or deny. And these are things that you tend to keep away from the world, including yourself. So we all have these things about ourselves that we tend to hide from the world and ourselves that are usually tied to fears, doubts, insecurities, and or shame that we've developed from experiences starting from childhood. And now this is something that we usually tend to neglect a lot because we tend to forget about our childhoods, especially if we've had a childhood that wasn't ideal, that was very traumatic. And so we tend to overlook that and keep pushing it forward and start wondering how we ended up at this point based off of what's happened within the last, say, 5 to 10 years. But it's important for us to go back into our childhoods and work from that point onward, so that way we don't look to hide all the things that tend to consume us. Because there are a lot of instances where we end up being consumed by the anxiety, the irritability, and the sadness, low self-esteem. And we end up at a point where we end up manifesting endless thoughts or ways of being that can affect our day-to-day lives. And it affects the relationships that we hold and how we view ourselves and even present ourselves to the world. So when we don't frequent with ourselves, we are allowing these things to really take over and change our outlook on life. We end up being at a point where we're just like, oh, well, you know what? I knew that I couldn't trust anyone. I knew that that was going to happen to me. I knew that I wasn't destined for greatness, or that I'm not deserving of all the good things in life because these are the things that keep happening for me. But in reality, once we start to sit down with the things that we tend to fear, hide, or repress, we end up at a point where we're just like, you know what? This happened to me. I'm going to forgive. This happened to me, but now I can empower myself. Oh, sure. That is something out of my control. Well, you know what? That doesn't define my worth or my ability or my sense of being. And so once we start to really sit there with things, we start to find ourselves looking at life a little bit differently. We will stop running and thinking that these symptoms will pass or magically disappear, and we'll start to take it as an indicator that there's something deeper that has roots and is in need of your immediate attention. Now, of course, we are not looking to always be in this constant state of healing, right? We also need to give ourselves rest. We need to give ourselves time. We need to give ourselves patience and grace. But it's the acknowledgement that leads us to then uncover that there is roots to the things that we tend to feel based off of prior experiences. And so you don't want it to hide in the shadows anymore. And you don't want your body to take score, because everything that we generally tend to hold on to is immediately stored in the body. And it's something that generally gets overlooked. But when we take a look at our bodies more closely, we start to realize, you know what, I have aches and pains, or these parts of my body are extremely tense all the time. And it's no coincidence that these things are generally tied back to the things that we may have experienced in the past, or feelings that we tend to really hold on to. More so anger or resentment, disappointment. These are generally strong feelings that really get stored in the body, and, you know, it really does have a great effect on us in more ways than we think. And so approaching this as something that is necessary for the sake of not believing that something is wrong with us, we should take it as something that allows us to be inspired to start truly getting to know who we are and how we've gotten to this point where we need this love, this attention, this care for ourselves, so that way we can learn more about all the things that have been coming up for us, but we haven't made the time to address it. And so this is where we begin to reclaim our power and move forward and not run from the things that we might have feared in the past. So now this is us moving forward without having to find an escape, right? Or a distraction, or just an excuse to say, you know what, I can't do it because of XYZ. This is the time where we look and reconnect with happiness, joy, and peace, and pave a way toward new beginnings. And this is something that we are generally uncomfortable with, because who wants to start over? Who wants to feel like they're at a ground zero with something that has no foundation? But this is something that allows you to break through that illusion, and you start accepting the truth about your world and the relationships that surround it. So it's important to, again, give yourself that patience, that grace, and the rest to continue, so that way we can build ourselves in a more positive light and not running away from things that live in our shadow. And so in this process, it's extremely important, while building this new foundation, that we are being so ever gentle with ourselves and so extremely loving in ways that we don't punish ourselves for anything that we may have done in the past. Of course, we may have done mistakes. We may have made certain decisions that we did without really knowing better, but it's important to not beat yourself up, because this builds on your discernment. This is when you start to identify certain patterns or certain beliefs that have led you to a point where you haven't been able to make the proper distinctions between the things that are for you and not for you. So slowly but surely, you're looking to build this level of trust in yourself, where you get to know who this new version of yourself is becoming, through the small things that you may have not been giving yourself. Again, it could be that love, it could be that patience, it could be that grace, or just simply having that trust in yourself that you can be able to do certain things without feeling like it'll lead you to a bad turn, right? So this is your time to try new things, to go on an adventure, remodel your room, your closet, do the things that bring you joy and pleasure in ways that align with your highest good. And so in this whole process, even though it's not the best considering how ugly it can be to heal, there's still really good things that tend to stem from it. It's just a matter of addressing what you feel and what you're thinking, and then reframing that into something more positive. So it's something that you are ultimately giving back to yourself as you are rebuilding, right? There are certain things that need to be shed. That sadness, that anxiety, that fear, that doubt, just recycling that into something more positive, more beneficial for you in the long term. So that way you can give yourself everything that you might have once lacked, and that you are not looking to find in someone else, but rather within yourself. For a long time, the one thing that held me back is just having this lack of trust and belief in not just myself, but the people that surrounded me. And so I constantly lived in this state of fear of instability, or not being able to feel like I was secure enough to be able to be safe wherever I was, or by the people that I was surrounded by. And so when I went through this major breakup about 2-3 years ago now, there came a point where this opened my eyes to what I may have endured in my childhood that I was constantly overlooking, because it's hard to dig back into your childhood if you came from a place of instability and looking at it from an adult lens and realizing, you know what, I really didn't know any better and there was nothing that I could do, and now I feel stuck, or like I'm the one to blame for all of this now in my adult life. But the truth is that in going through this major breakup, it allowed me to see what I couldn't see before. Now, no one wants to go through a breakup and go through the heartbreak of it all, but it was truly a blessing in disguise to be able to go through that and eventually learn all the things that I've learned in doing the shadow work that came along with it. Now, shadow work, again, is not the prettiest. It's the ugliest thing before it could turn into something beautiful. And so with me, I had this sense of instability in my life that was creating a lot of patterns where I would surround myself by people who could not give me what I felt like I needed. Now, granted, things that I needed to come from myself. But at the time, I was always looking for stability in other people. I was looking for home in other people. But I was also looking to find it in people who were emotionally unavailable and unable to have the capacity to provide a level of love, a level of peace, a level of stability that comes from a secure place. I was always attracting people who would mirror who I was. And when I reached the point where I was looking to heal, I started to see how I was in more lack, because I was dependent on looking to find what I needed by overcompensating. And so I was giving away my love. I was giving away my effort. I was giving away my consistency to other people who, again, had their own cups that they couldn't fill. So I was filling empty cups while completely destroying mine. And so in doing that, like, it led me to a point where I end up going through this breakup, and now I'm opening my eyes to the realities of what was, and delving deep using the shadow work that I ended up doing, just by going through therapy, just by, looking to find ways in which I could heal more. Like, I was desperate to heal. I wanted to heal so that way I wouldn't cry nearly as much as I needed to. But then I ended up uncovering things that, again, now I'm looking to share with you. And the discomfort is only temporary. It's temporary, but necessary, because now we can take the discomfort and change it into something else. But now it becomes the power that we ultimately wield when we now reach a point where we can stand up for ourselves, for when we can be a person with boundaries that are constantly being upheld and maintained, and we don't feel like we need to resort to other things or people behaviors that ultimately no longer serve us. And so healing work is absolutely worthwhile. It's worthwhile because you really get to know things better from your perspective, but on a deeper level where it's not necessarily biased on the basis of your ego or any external influence that you may have had in the past. Now you're really looking to face the things that, again, you may have hidden from yourself, from others, and now you get to look at them more closely to a point where you get to uncover all the things that may have not made sense in the past, but make sense as you learn to get to know yourself, what patterns you are constantly falling into, and really changing your outlook on the basis of, like, you know what, actually, this is something that no longer serves me, and I shouldn't continue doing this because I want to be a better person. I want to change the way that I perceive myself, but also what surrounds me. And so even though it's very difficult, and again, it can be very ugly, it is the best thing that you can ultimately do for yourself. A breakup could end you. Losing your job could end you. A lot of things could end us, but does it really? It doesn't. Think of it as the beginning of new things that you couldn't have possibly had being at that job, being with that person, being stuck where you were. Now you get to move forward, and before you know it, you are healing. You are actually laughing. You are smiling. You are feeling joy, contentment, freedom. You reclaim your power. Most of all, you reclaim your power, and there's nothing greater than that. And so while doing the work is challenging, it's hard, you cry, you yell, you scream at times, it is the best thing that you can do. And in going through this experience, I have not regretted one thing that I've done to get to where I am. Being where I am is exactly where I'm meant to be. And here I am giving you the step-by-step from my lens in order for you to be able to pave your own way, inspired by what resonates, to heal, to grow, to change, but in a more positive, productive way that, again, serves your higher self, and it doesn't lead you to self-destruction, doubt, or uncertainties that lead you to be in a place where you can't move forward because you're being held back by the things that you tend to hide from yourself. I hope that this episode has inspired you to look into what you can do to start healing. In the next episode, we are going to look how to ignite what we are inspired by, and we will continue to pave this way forward, sharing these experiences that I've had and looking to build. This is a time where you get to start anew and build. So I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one. Let's ignite.